Hi, I'm Degé Coutee with the Patient Advocacy Network at CannabisSavesLives.org, and this is the Compassion Flower Report. When I last reported to you, I had stated that this next report here would be dedicated to our recent work in the California legislature. When we wrapped the last report, I let you know that PAN was in the process of drafting a letter to the California legislature, letting them know the huge flaws with Proposition 64 and how they are affecting patients, primarily in the pocketbook, and how this is directly correlated to the expansive underground illicit black market that we have in California, and the fact that the state is seeing such fewer taxes than they had anticipated when this law had passed. So that letter is available for you to look at our blog. There at our blog spot. The link is there. Of course, you can go to our website. You can click over to our blog and take a look at the letter that we wrote. The one that is posted is the one that I sent to the governor's office. We sent it to every member of the Senate and Assembly and the appropriate aide or deputy in that representative's office. And we sent it to all of the pertinent department heads, the Consumer Affairs, Department of Ag, Public Health, the Cannabis Bureau, the Board of Equalization, etc., to let them know that there need to be some amendments, that we need to make cannabis at the regulated register as affordable as possible, to bring it as close to what it is on the unregulated market. One of the studies that we reported on here at the Compassion Flower Report talked about how much people are willing to spend at the register for tested cannabis, and that's the $10 mark was a little unclear. I didn't know if that was probably per eighth, I'm guessing, because of course there's a lot of different types of cannabis products and volume in which it's sold. So generally the market will withstand about a $10 increase at the register if the consumer is walking out of there with appropriately labeled, packaged, tested cannabis. So the state needs to look really long and hard at this. It frustrates me to no end as a patient advocate that cannabis is treated so horribly for so many decades, and then all of a sudden Mary Jane is responsible for fixing every pothole, funding every school, righting every wrong of the drug war. I mean, she's just responsible for everything. So, good and bad, right? So, and now, of course, she's got to fund the bill for everything. So, the legislature needs to really analyze that and look at that really hard, especially when it comes to medical. We need to protect medical. And while the Patient Advocacy Network is going to continue to be an active and consistent and persistent voice in Sacramento on this issue, it is very important that your elected official hears from you on this issue, even on a local level. I'll talk a little bit. I wanted to talk about state first. However, I also attended a meeting in Los Angeles, and I think it's very telling, this kind of tug of war that's going on, and how, you know, the local issues and what people are going through locally are having them not see what is really holding them down. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. But yeah, patients need advocates, providers, compassion, all of that. People who are for all of those things need to come forward. And the Patient Advocacy Network is here to provide you with the tools you need to effectively communicate with your elected official and be an effective voice in the policy making process, the policy amending process, whatever needs to happen. The Patient Advocacy Network is here to provide that for you. Again, our contact information all over here on all of our social media, website, phone number, email. And I'll tell you, the phone is the easiest way to get a hold of me or send me a text. I do not always check email every day. I'm on the go. I'm pretty busy, which is why you actually have not heard from the Compassion Flower Report nearly as often as I would like to bring you news and information. But we've been really busy in the field. We've had a lot going on. The state and different local jurisdictions here are going from the temporary permitting process to the regular annual permitting and recertification process. A lot of people jumping through hoops. A lot of the social equity things are going on here locally and in the state of California. So there's just been a lot going on as an advocate here, working with people on the state and local level. But that's part of also what I want the Compassion Flower Report to be able to bring you. I love bringing you the news because I find it fascinating what's going on with medical cannabis all over. However, there's a lot going on right here in my own front yard, and I'm very actively involved in it. And I want you to be too. So, back to what I was saying, contact me. I will teach you very quickly and on a very personal level, because medical cannabis use is a very personal experience. And addressing that with your elected official is a personal experience. And I want to help you craft that. That is something when we founded this organization, and I founded it with my beloved friend Richard Kearns, that was a very, very important component of the education that we have always sought, that has always been our mission to provide, is to empower people to be the most effective advocate, activist, and self advocate for yourself as a medical cannabis patient as you can be. And as you know, Prop 215 has been eroded. There are some people that will say Prop 215 is dead. That once collectives and cooperatives were considered, quote unquote, phased out on January 9th, just magically, out of nowhere, collectives and cooperatives don't exist anymore in the world of medical cannabis. We don't have compassion. That was vetoed. There is another version of that bill going through the legislature, which, you know, we will follow and continue to see what's going on with that. The letter I sent, again, that letter is available at our blog. You can see what we wrote. But we did get some response. A handful of the legislature emailed me back and let me know that this was valuable information, and they recognized that this excessive taxation on patients and the taxation in general is driving the black market cannabis in California. One of the responses was from specifically Rob Bonta's office, indicating that he is introducing a bill to slightly reduce the excise tax for a short amount of time and then increase it again. So they really need to look at this issue of the market can withhold that $10 more than the black market for going to the register, and much more than that you have a problem. I don't know how the legislature is going to reconcile that. It's something that I think that needs to be talked about, and we need to do what we can to protect patients in the state of California. Local level, like I said, I attended a meeting here in Los Angeles. It was a meeting of the Cannabis Regulatory Commission, and there were basically 3 reports given, all from the Department of Cannabis Regulation. That's the actual city department reporting to the commission. And it was a three-part report that talked about what was going on with the permitting process for what the city of Los Angeles refers to as the existing medical marijuana dispensaries. These were all of the existing operations prior to Prop 64, but also met a list of criteria that the city has set forth regarding their length of operation and the different things they filed for the interim control ordinance and Measure M, and that's been a crazy circus in of itself in Los Angeles to determine. Basically, the city of LA had a ban, and they called it a limited immunity ban, and they had this long list of criteria that if you felt you met that criteria, then you may continue to operate claiming that you are eligible under the limited immunity status. The city never asked anyone to submit documentation of proof of this status. The city never kind of went after anybody. It was just one of those things where you can just claim you had limited immunity. Of course, the big thing was zoning. That was the thing that the city could say, no, you're definitely not in the correct zone. But as far as all the other paperwork, that was just kind of this thing left in limbo until legalization came into place. MRSA, these other things in the city switched over from this limited immunity to regulations. So basically, they've got this category, this group that they refer to as the existing medical marijuana dispensaries, and this other group that they have started taking applications from, which is the social equity program applicants. And unfortunately, the way it appears that the city has set this up, and I still have a lot to learn and investigate about this myself, but at least due to the tension in the room, due to the public testimony that people who attended this meeting stated at the podium, there is clearly a tension and divide between the existing medical marijuana dispensary applicants and licensees and the social equity program applicants and licensees. And it's not any fault of the applicants. It is due to flaws in the law. And while there are cries for social justice and social equity and a fair shake at getting a permit in the city of Los Angeles, again, no one on the commission, none of the public comments, nothing we're hearing from the city is addressing the fact that it is going to be largely impossible to have social equity anywhere with cannabis in California with how outrageous the taxes and the fees are. If you don't get rid of the illicit market, as they say, and you're never going to completely get rid of it, but if you're not even attempting to compete with it, and you think that just enforcement is the solution, forget it. And it will be evident as one by one, the existing operations, the people all across the state of California who've been complying with their local regs, waiting for the state to get online, all of those. I mean, then when you see those mom and pops struggle, maybe even close, who knows how many already have, struggling to get through with these regulations, when you see the number of social equity applicants have a really difficult time running one of these businesses, not because they're not because there's, well, I got my associates in business. I get that. Have you ever tried to run the day-to-day operations of the most highly regulated industry in the state of California, let alone the country? These people are going to have a really hard time. And when they look at that bottom line, and when they've run other businesses, if they have, and they see side by side what it looks like to run a cannabis business versus maybe a liquor store, maybe a convenience store, maybe a bar or restaurant somewhere along the line, shoe store, who knows? But when they look at the number of regulations and what it's going to take, and then they can't do it. I mean, even the people who have been anticipating this and already doing it and dealing with 280E and all of that for these many decades are still having a hard time dealing with it. How are all these people who are basically applying for what cities have created is a potential just entitlement program, and expect these people to be able to survive some of the most stringent state regulations? The social equity program is a great idea in theory. But if people don't address what's going on, again, in Sacramento, you can't have social equity on the local level when Sacramento is putting a stranglehold on everybody and nobody's talking about patience or compassion. There will never be social equity in cannabis if you throw the patience and compassion under the bus. There's got to be social equity there with the patients first. If the patients are put first in this equation, all the other social equity will fall in line. We'll understand why we need to open up the number of area where we can put licenses and not pit people against each other. I saw a room where this idea that resourced dispensary operators or resourced cannabis business operators have this huge advantage over unresourced social equity applicants. I saw in a room where a comment by one of the commissioners created black and brown tension in the room because she thought there was mention about the number of African Americans who have not gotten permits versus who have. And one of the commissioners wanted to know why there wasn't more talk of what was going on with brown people and their applicants, those applicants. The comment just created this little vibration of tension there for a second, even amongst the social equity applicants. So now you've got there's already black and brown tension in Los Angeles. So now we're seeing it played out even in social equity. So you've got racial issues, you've got class issues, you've got, and again, nobody's realizing that, or at least wanting to address the fact that there is no social equity if Sacramento has a stranglehold on the whole process. If patients have largely returned to an illicit market and are no longer using dispensaries, as patients continue to tell me, if this is your first time ever tuning into the Compassion Flower Report, I'll tell you, I did a survey of patients. I deal with the needier, poorer patients in the state. And some of those people that have reached out to me, I've reached back out to them and said, hey, this started about a year ago. Hey, yeah, it's about a year ago, almost exactly a year ago. Hey, how's your experience at the dispensary? Do they still have a compassion program? Do you like the variety? Do you like the way it's packaged? The fact that you can't really smell it? Degé, whoa. I don't even go to a dispensary anymore. Hey, fellow friend and dispensary operator, do you still see your patients anymore? Your old patients? No. Haven't seen them since January 1st last year. The regulated spots are having a difficult time staying afloat. They're playing this crazy game with investors and the money to stay afloat and operate. That's why they all need investors, because they have the we're going to ride it out. There's going to be this wave. We're going to ride it out. We're going to ride it out, and the market is going to correct itself. I look forward to seeing that. I'm not quite sure how that's going to happen the way we're looking at it now. It's a regulated market, and it's regulated by amendable laws. And these laws are not going to amend themselves, and therefore I don't know how a market will correct itself with bad laws. So, again, people got to look at the big picture. People got to realize they got to get involved. California is known as the social experiment for things that are political and different and worthy of helping to change the world. And we have just watched, we have witnessed something very progressive and important. Something that helps people tremendously have a fantastic quality of life when they otherwise would not. And we've seen between Prop 64 and the legislature and other factors just pull the rug out from underneath that. So again, the Patient Advocacy Network, we are going to continue to do everything we can for the patient perspective. We're here for the fight. You wouldn't think that after having legalization that this is where we'd be, that this would be the new fight would have to be to fight to resurrect compassion and the Compassionate Use Act, and to ensure that medical cannabis patients aren't forced to the black market for affordable cannabis. So that's where we are. I am looking forward to hearing from you all. I also want to greatly thank those who have reached out to me over these last few weeks to provide me with your stories and your input. It is always very, very helpful. So I'm Degé Coutee with the Compassion Flower Report. I want to thank you for tuning in. I do encourage you to become a monthly sponsor. PAN is a 501c3 educational organization. Your contribution is always tax deductible, and it is used directly for education and advocacy programs to have better policy for patients. Get a hold of us. Thank you so much for your time.